Are you feeling like the modern world is just a rigged game? Have you ever had this creeping suspicion that the institutions around you are actively demanding you suppress your instincts?
Right, like you're supposed to apologize for your ambition.
Exactly. Like you're playing this game where the rules just magically change depending on who's holding the whistle.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive.
And today, we are unpacking something intense. We're not just looking at a critique of that feeling you have. We are diving into an absolute manifesto that treats those exact feelings not as paranoia, but as the fundamental baseline reality of modern life.
Yeah, it's a staggering, really unapologetic landscape we're exploring. We're taking a massive deep dive into a provocative 2025 ebook titled Behavioral Psychology, Frame, Fortitude, and Extinction of Failure by Conrad Riker.
And, to understand this book, you really have to understand that it leaves zero room for sentimentality. Like, absolutely none.
Yeah, it treats the entire human experience. I mean,
Yeah.
everything from the food you eat to how you argue with a spouse to your bank accounts as a literal theater of war. It really does. And right out of the gate, we need to set the parameters for you, the listener. Because this book is explicitly written for a men's rights activist audience.
Right. It's targeting red-pilled manosphere men. And its entire premise is focused on how men can reclaim personal and legal sovereignty in what the author describes as a system that is definitively captured and rigged against them.
Which brings us to a really crucial point we need to make before we start tearing the engine block out of this thing.
Exactly. As your guides on this deep dive, we have a very specific job today. We are here to impartially unpack and analyze this source material for you.
Right, we are not endorsing this.
We're not taking sides, and we're not validating the political, right-wing, or left-wing viewpoints presented within its pages.
Our mission is strictly to convey and explore the psychological tactics, the biological frameworks, and the game theory contained in Riker's work, so you can fully understand the architecture of this worldview.
Period. We're treating this text like a newly discovered machine. We're taking the casing off, looking at the gears, and just figuring out exactly how it generates the power it claims to have.
So before we get into the mechanics of that, make sure to like and subscribe to our deep dives.
Yes, please do. And if this analysis hooks you, you can grab the ebook we're reviewing today on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. And be sure to follow the author at Conrad Riker at Substack.
Okay, so let's get into it. The foundation of Riker's entire armor begins with a total rejection of the way most people think about personal growth.
He hates the self-help industry.
Despises it. He opens the book by stating modern men are engaged in a silent war where weakness is actively punished.
Right.
He says biology simply does not care about fairness.
Right, and he completely bypasses the obsession with motivation. He thinks motivation is a sucker's game because it's just a feeling.
Exactly. Feelings
Yeah.
fluctuate, right? You have a bad cup of coffee or get a weird email and your motivation is gone. So instead, he grounds his whole philosophy in the work of B.F. Skinner.
The behavioral psychologist. And let's break down the mechanics of Skinner's work here, because this is where Riker's model really gets its teeth. A lot of people know Skinner from his pigeon experiments.
Right. Proving that behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated.
But the actual mechanics of what Skinner did during World War II were just wild. He literally trained pigeons to guide missiles.
It sounds made up, but it's true.
I know. They put these pigeons inside missile nose cones, and the birds would peck at a screen showing the target. Every time they pecked accurately, a mechanical dispenser dropped a seed.
So Skinner didn't try to, motivate the pigeon with patriotism or whatever.
Right, he just manipulated the reward loop. And Riker takes this exact architectural concept and applies it to human discipline.
He argues you have to become your own Skinner box. Because Riker points out that your brain's dopamine pathways, those neurological circuits driving your behavior, they are entirely amoral.
They don't care if a reward is virtuous.
Exactly. They don't care if a habit is destroying your life. They only care about the exchange rate for survival. So Riker advocates for using extreme negative reinforcement to build psychological calluses.
So wait, if I'm understanding this, he's basically saying we need to treat our own lizard brains the exact same way a ruthless dog trainer treats a disobedient puppy, like using a shock collar of our own design.
That is precisely the mechanism. He calls it ruthless self-correction. To bypass weak willpower, he tells his readers to create pacts with a ruthless friend.
Oh, the penalty pact.
Yeah, the mechanism relies on making the penalty for failure so psychologically agonizing that your brain just chooses discipline to avoid the pain.
So, an example he gives, if you smoke a cigarette, you don't just put $1 in a swear jar. You are contractually obligated to transfer $500 to an organization you ideologically despise.
And his specific example is transferring funds to Planned Parenthood.
Right, which makes sense for his target demographic. If you're a right-leaning reader, the financial loss hurts, but the ideological betrayal of funding something you oppose creates this massive cognitive dissonance.
It weaponizes your own political disgust against your bad habit.
Or the other example, if you skip church, your ruthless friend forced you to wash his car in a public driveway while wearing a pink apron.
The behavioral economics there are critical.
Mhm.
He brings up the ancient Spartans using public shame to turn intentions into iron.
Because in Riker's view, modern society is just too comfortable to naturally forge tough men anymore. So you have to introduce intentional friction.
Yeah, he calls it the sandpaper of cold showers and pre-dawn workouts. You have to earn your dopamine.
Right, like for every hour you spend lifting weights, you earn 30 minutes of screen time. But what really stood out to me, it wasn't just the gym stuff, it's how he weaponizes emotional control in real time.
Oh, you mean the breathing technique?
Yeah, the Navy SEAL 478 breathing method. And again, Riker isn't doing this for wellness or yoga, he approaches it purely mechanistically.
He tells that story about the corporate manager, right? The one facing a highly coordinated wrongful termination suit.
A complete trap. A subordinate was actively sabotaging a project, specifically designed to provoke an explosive reaction from the manager.
Because then they could record it and use it as evidence of a hostile work environment, an ambush.
Exactly. But instead of reacting emotionally, the manager used the 478 method. You inhale quietly through your nose for 4 beats, hold for 7, and exhale forcefully through your mouth for 8.
And Riker explains the neurology of this. Those 19 seconds of oxygen manipulation do something specific. They stimulate the vagus nerve.
Which runs from the brainstem down to the abdomen, and by manually stimulating it, you override the sympathetic nervous system, a fight-or-flight response.
And you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest state.
Because when someone provokes you, your amygdala floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Your vision narrows. You are biologically primed to scream.
But the breathing physically forces your heart rate to slow down. Riker says it transforms a man from a red-faced, screaming liability into a surgical problem solver.
Special forces call it tactical patience. And he takes this internal mastery and applies it to interpersonal dynamics. He calls it the Jim Halpert technique.
From The Office. It's brilliantly framed. He's talking about weaponized indifference.
Right, think about how Jim deals with Dwight's frantic energy. He doesn't match it, he just deadpans at the camera. In behavioral psychology, this is starving an extinction burst.
When a troll online or an office rival tries to provoke you, they want an emotional supply. They want to know they affect you.
So no reaction equals no reward. It's like a vending machine. If someone puts a quarter in and shakes it and candy falls out, they're going to keep shaking it.
But if they shake it and absolutely nothing happens, they eventually stop. Riker is telling men to become an unresponsive machine when faced with toxic behavior.
And that transition from the internal state to the external reality is huge for him. Once you've hacked your discipline loops, you've established your frame.
Frame control, it's everything in this book. And he uses a great historical metaphor here, the biblical story of David and Saul, to explain it.
Oh yeah, 1 Samuel 17. When David volunteers to fight Goliath, King Saul offers David his royal armor. It's heavy, it's prestigious, it's what a warrior is supposed to wear.
But David puts it on and realizes he can't move, so he rejects it. He takes his simple shepherd sling and walks onto the battlefield.
And Riker views this as the ultimate historical masterclass in maintaining psychological sovereignty. Frame control is basically the battle over whose reality is accepted in an interaction.
Exactly. The person with the strongest frame imposes their context on the room. Saul's frame was, you must fight like a traditional soldier. David's frame was, I fight like a shepherd.
David refused to adopt a reality that put him at a disadvantage, and Riker argues society is constantly handing men armor, behavioral expectations, corporate jargon designed to restrict them.
But Riker insists this psychological frame is totally useless without the physical infrastructure to support it.
Right, you can have the strongest mindset, but if your biology is compromised, your frame collapses. And he points to sleep deprivation as the primary enemy.
He treats sleep not as wellness, but as a critical vulnerability in a man's legal defense.
Which is wild. He cites a Harvard Legal Review analysis showing fatigued fathers lose 37% more custody battles than rested fathers.
And you have to unpack the mechanics of that. Why does a tired father lose in court?
Because a courtroom is a high-stress, adversarial environment designed to test your composure under cross-examination.
Right, and when you're sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles impulse control, is severely compromised.
You are way more likely to snap at a hostile lawyer or show frustration. And the opposing counsel's whole strategy might just be to poke a tired man until he acts like the angry male stereotype.
So Riker views 8 hours of sleep as literal armor against legal self-sabotage.
Same logic applies to the gym. Lifting weights isn't about vanity, it's forging the neurological pathway of doing hard things. He explicitly calls muscle mass anti-simp armor.
But the engine fuel for this armor is what he calls the anti-weakness diet. And this bridges from self-help into biochemical warfare.
Let's talk about the Wall Street quantitative analyst. This guy tracked his blood alcohol concentration with a BPAC breathalyzer during client dinners.
He wouldn't just drink blindly. And before the dinners, he took a supplement called nicotinamide riboside.
Right, the biology of that is fascinating. Nicotinamide riboside is a precursor to NAD+, which is a coenzyme crucial for cellular energy metabolism.
It converts food into ATP. And under heavy stress or alcohol, NAD+ levels plummet, causing cognitive fog.
So by taking this precursor, the quant was biologically insulating his brain against the alcohol. And Riker claims he executed multi-million-dollar trades the next morning with 70% fewer errors than his hungover colleagues.
He used biochemistry to outmaneuver his peers. But the story that really illustrates this is the San Francisco lawyer.
Oh, this is my favorite one. This guy fasted for 19 hours straight before walking into a $2 billion merger negotiation.
And the opposing counsel is sitting there at the recess eating a massive stack of pancakes.
The ultimate carbohydrate trap. Let's explain why the pancakes are a strategic disaster here.
When you eat pancakes and syrup, your blood glucose spikes massively. Your pancreas releases a flood of insulin,
Which usually overcompensates, leading to reactive hypoglycemia, the sugar crash. So the opposing lawyers are suddenly dealing with plummeting energy in the middle of a billion-dollar deal.
Meanwhile, the fasting lawyer has depleted his glycogen stores. He's shifted into ketosis.
His liver is producing ketone bodies from stored fat. And Riker points to science showing ketones cross the blood-brain barrier roughly 3 times faster than glucose.
Ketones provide a highly stable, completely flat line of cognitive energy. No insulin roller coaster.
The fasting lawyer had maximum mental acuity. He literally told Riker I could smell the syrup on their weakness. He dominated the negotiation through superior metabolic stamina.
Which introduces the hormetic hierarchy. Hormesis is the principle that a low dose of a stressor makes an organism stronger.
So Riker wants men to constantly subject themselves to controlled acute stressors. Fasting until noon, intense sparring, or a 14 degrees Celsius cold plunge.
Because plunging into freezing water triggers a 530% spike in norepinephrine. It's a neurotransmitter for vigilance and focus.
He argues modern men are feeding their brains like Lamborghini engines running on cheap diesel. You have to induce the biological state of a predator.
But Riker knows that being this hyper-optimized machine is at odds with what society expects. He calls it Schrodinger's machismo.
This is a really incisive critique. Schrodinger's machismo is the double-bind demand placed on modern men. Society demands you be a vulnerable, emotionally articulate therapist to your partner.
But simultaneously, you have to be an impervious terminator the second a financial or physical crisis hits.
And Riker says this isn't just confusing, it's strategic social sabotage designed to keep men constantly off balance.
So to counter it, he goes straight to data. He references prescriptive stereotype research from MIT.
He advises readers that when they face accusations of toxic masculinity, like in HR or family court, they should never argue back emotionally. You bury the accusation under documented excellence.
He gives a case study of a divorced father in a hostile custody battle. The ex-wife tried to paint him as the unstable, deadbeat dad.
And if the father had gotten angry in court, he would have played right into the stereotype, the angry male trap.
Exactly. Instead, this father produced staggering empirical data. Time-stamped gym selfies to prove he was healthy during visits.
Yeah.
Exact ledger logs of bank transfers showing early child support payments.
And a daily bullet journal meticulously tracking his emotional regulation and sleep. He provided such an overwhelming volume of structural excellence that the court's biases couldn't reconcile with the evidence.
The narrative just collapsed under the data.
Okay, so if a man successfully builds this physical and psychological armor, he has to test it. And Riker argues the ultimate stress test isn't the boardroom, it's the living room.
This is where we get into highly controversial advanced game theory. He views modern marriage as a leveraged buyout.
He asserts that under no-fault divorce laws, signing a marriage contract hands over 50% of your assets and future earnings without any binding performance metrics on the other party.
Which is why he holds up 1980s corporate raiders like Carl Icahn as role models for handling embittered spouses.
It's a chilling parallel. But mechanically, Riker argues it's identical. Icahn's playbook was disrupt, distract, dominate.
Icahn threatened to liquidate an airline unless unions surrendered pensions. Confronted with total annihilation, they folded.
And Riker points out over 60% of contested divorces involve similar financial ambushes, emptying joint accounts, false restraining orders.
So to prevent being ambushed, he advises men to build structural leverage from day one. He highlights a Reddit user named Ironhold.
Yeah, Ironhold realized he was bleeding money because his girlfriend was making frivolous Amazon Prime purchases. But instead of arguing which violates the emotional reaction rule, he instituted a feudal-style cohabitation pact.
He wrote a script. Every time a purchase hit that Amazon account, an automated software trigger transferred the exact same dollar amount from his checking account into a cold storage crypto wallet only he controlled.
He didn't tell her to stop buying things. He just structurally matched her spending with asset protection. 6 months later, they broke up, but he had systematically reclaimed $8,400.
Riker calls this behavioral psychology fused with contractual pragmatism. But you have to contrast that with the complete disaster of the Silicon Valley love ledger.
Oh man, the love ledger. This is exactly what not to do. This tech CEO treated his marriage like a startup. He made a shared Google spreadsheet with 427 rows.
He tracked date nights, gifts, chores, even sexual encounters, complete with color-coded ROI calculations.
Return on investment for a marriage. And of course, when his wife found it, the marriage violently imploded.
But wait, why does Riker praise the crypto script but mock the spreadsheet? What's the mechanical difference?
The error wasn't the tracking. The error was codifying the implicit. By making his framework transparent, he gave his wife the exact map of how he was trying to control her. It insulted her autonomy.
To explain the correct way to handle power dynamics, Riker dives into the history of the Ottoman Empire, specifically the veiled Nash equilibrium.
Let's define Nash equilibrium first. It's a game theory concept named after John Nash. It's a state in a competitive game where no player can increase their payoff by changing their strategy, as long as others keep theirs unchanged. It's perfect gridlock.
Right, and women historically achieved this without formal legal power. In the 1500s, Ottoman sultans were mostly born to concubines. The empire was run from the harem by women with zero legal standing.
And the absolute master of this was Roxolana. She was a kidnapped slave who eventually became the legal wife of Suleiman the Magnificent.
But she didn't use a spreadsheet. She used the veiled Nash equilibrium. She didn't explicitly document her moves. She built shadow networks.
She would bankrupt rival concubines through strategic charity, building massive public soup kitchens. It looked pious, but mechanically she was forcing rivals into a spending war they couldn't win.
While maintaining plausible deniability with the Sultan. So Riker says women have historically optimized survival by outwardly complying while building shadow networks, and men are fools not to parallel play.
You don't announce boundaries with a spreadsheet. You manage the relationship implicitly. And this is where he leans on Skinner's variable ratio reinforcement.
Which is the mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. If a slot machine paid out every 10 pulls exactly, you'd get bored.
But because it's randomized, your brain's dopamine system goes into hyperdrive. The unpredictability creates intense psychological dependency.
And Riker tells men to become slot machines. Make rewards completely unpredictable. Most men tie anniversary trips to a calendar date. Riker says that's a surrendered frame.
Because the woman knows the reward is coming regardless of her behavior. Riker advises tying rewards to strict, unannounced behavioral standards.
If the relationship is functioning smoothly, surprise her with a trip. If she's engaging in toxic behavior, the reward schedule dries up without explanation.
But I have to push back here. Because if you're freezing your wife's credit card until she hits the gym, or acting like a randomized slot machine, you aren't a husband, you're a warden.
Right.
Doesn't this Ottoman HR playbook paranoia destroy the very concept of love? You can't ever relax.
That is the biggest critique of this genre. But Riker counters that by stating your definition of love is a Disney-fabricated vulnerability that gets men destroyed in family court.
He argues love without structural leverage is just naivety.
Yes. He claims women are biologically wired to respect earned hierarchies far more than empty negotiated equality. He gives the example of the man who froze his wife's supplementary card until she met fitness goals.
And her frivolous spending dropped by 89% and her health improved. To Riker, systems beat sentiments. The friction created the result.
It is incredibly cold, and when resistance occurs, he champions the broken record technique for enforcing boundaries.
Like the San Diego landlord who evicted a highly manipulative tenant in 11 days, the tenant tried sob stories and legal threats.
The landlord bypassed all of it. He just repeated the exact terms of the lease violation 23 times across texts and calls. Zero variation.
It's like a distributed denial of service attack, a DDoS attack on a human brain. You flood their emotional bandwidth until their psychological servers crash.
It's tied to the rule of never J80E. Justify, argue, defend, or explain. Riker says the moment you explain a boundary, you hand over frame control.
Because an explanation submits your boundary for their approval. By repeating the condition without variation, you induce compliance fatigue. They exhaust themselves into submission.
So if a man masters his biology in his household, what happens when he steps outside? Because Riker views broader institutions as an active war zone.
He believes academia, corporate HR, media, public schooling, all of it has been entirely captured by feminist and Marxist ideologies.
He argues they used to be based on merit and biological realities, but have been colonized by grievance politics.
And as a reminder to you listening, we are impartially exploring his worldview here. To prove this institutional capture, Riker cites Florida's Stop WOKE Act, framing it as necessary legislative defense against corporate indoctrination.
He also heavily references a Georgia father who sued his son's school district after discovering the staff socially transitioned his 13-year-old child using new pronouns completely without the father's consent.
For Riker, these are systemic evidence of ideological colonization, the state actively trying to sever the authority of the father.
And he looks at the history of academia to explain this. He points to James Lindsay's 2018 grievance studies hoax,
Which was a massive scandal. Lindsay and his team wanted to prove certain academic fields had descended into dogma, so they wrote absurd, intentionally ridiculous papers packed with postmodern jargon.
and submitted them to top-tier peer-reviewed journals. And the journals published them, because the papers confirmed the reviewers' ideological biases.
One of the papers published in a respected sociological journal was literally a study on human reactions to rape culture in urban dog parks. They observed dogs humping and extrapolated it to human patriarchy.
The fact that PhDs publish that is Riker's proof that gatekeepers are compromised. So his solution is ideological hygiene.
He points to documentaries like The Social Dilemma to show how algorithms rewire the brain. He says men must build epistemological armor.
A defense system for how they process truth. He demands the creation of a red pill library. Anchor your mind in the historical canon, not Twitter.
He mandates reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics for Logic, Carl Jung for Masculine Archetypes, and Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life for Structural Responsibility.
And for processing modern media, he introduces the 3D filter. Detect, debunk, disregard.
First, detect manipulative language words like problematic or lived experience, which he calls linguistic Trojan horses.
Second, debunk via Socratic questioning. Strip the emotion away to find the logical fallacy.
Third, disregard via controlled media exposure. He literally tells men to treat the news cycle like a hazmat team treats a chemical spill. Minimize exposure and scrub yourself afterward.
Absolute psychological quarantine. And this leads to his real-world reputation protection. Because if institutions are captured, HR is enemy territory.
He mandates extreme defensive measures to avoid false allegations, the elevator protocol.
The examples are striking. He highlights an Atlanta pastor with 0 accusations in 15 years because he requires a male deacon to be physically present during any counseling session with a female congregant.
He also points to a Dallas CEO who absolutely refuses to close his office door when meeting with female staff, regardless of confidentiality.
Riker bases this on a 14th century Islamic scholar, Ibn Taymiyyah, and his concept of the architecture of temptation. But Riker recontextualizes it as the architecture of false accusation.
If you're never in a situation where it's your word against hers, you eliminate the threat vector. So he establishes a witness hierarchy.
This ranks the defensive value of evidence. At the top, a live human observer. Below that, timestamped video. Below that, audio recording. And at the bottom, a written log.
He advises men to maneuver toward the top. If you have to fire a female employee, ensure a third-party human observer is present to kill plausible deniability.
He also introduces the 3R shield: record, report, and rebut. record voice memos summarizing one-on-one meetings, and auto-upload them to a secure cloud.
Then report by proactively CCing HR on summaries to establish a paper trail first, and rebut using pre-drafted legal templates so you never respond emotionally.
This ties into his concept of gray rocking and the 3D reset. Disengage physically, document provocations, and delegate enforcement to HR or bailiffs.
Gray rocking is a technique for dealing with narcissists. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a gray rock. By stripping all emotional supply, you force manipulators to find easier targets.
But again, you have to ask, it's like treating coworkers like counter-espionage agents. Does this resilience stack grant freedom or just put you in a highly customized prison?
You're spending your whole life looking over your shoulder. But Riker's response is that the prison already exists. You're already inside it. The invisible architecture of capture is all around you.
He argues he's just giving you tools to be the warden instead of the inmate.
Which brings us to the final, most ambitious part of Riker's philosophy. Surviving the present is step one. We now move into conquering the future through legacy.
He completely disguises short-term thinking. He views modern consumerism as a sickness that destroys bloodlines.
He contrasts the Vanderbilts with the Rockefellers. The Vanderbilts blew a $300 million fortune by 1910 billions today on Newport cottages and parties. The wealth vanished.
But the Rockefellers survived 7 generations. How? Airtight legal trusts and no lazy heirs clauses.
You don't just get cash. An heir couldn't access the principal unless they met rigorous benchmarks of productivity. Get a real job, start a business, or as Riker jokes, join the French Foreign Legion.
Wealth is conditional on competence. He gives another extreme example of an African chief of the Indabels.
This chief realized his people's wealth was vulnerable. He built a village university and decreed every male descendant had to teach there until they produced 2 PhDs within the bloodline.
Prioritizing human capital over fiat currency. And that family maintained a 94% wealth retention rate straight through the catastrophic hyperinflation of Zimbabwe.
Riker argues wealth preservation requires absolute financial Darwinism. He calls this the family manifesto. Legacy is warfare across time. You're engineering a bloodline.
He cites the Venetian Libro d'Oro, the Golden Book, a strict registry mandating aristocrats marry across strategic intelligence networks. Treating marriage as a genetic and financial merger created an oligarchy that lasted 400 years.
To protect assets now, he advocates the Swiss cheese strategy, jurisdictional arbitrage. You slice assets across different jurisdictions, asset classes, and currencies.
You wargame catastrophic scenarios. What if a Marxist government legally bans private property? Or if you hold everything in Bitcoin and an EMP fries the grid?
So you build a decentralized network. Physical gold in a Singapore vault, real estate in Texas or Dubai, crypto off exchanges, cash reserves in Swiss francs.
No single political disaster can gut your legacy. But he goes even further into mimetic immortality.
He wants to pass on the psychological framework itself. He references an MIT virality study showing ideas embed deepest when 97% of people feel excluded or offended by them.
The sacrificial structure. If an idea is offensive to the mainstream, the people who do agree form an incredibly tight, zealous in-group to defend it.
He tells his readers to act like sleeper agents. Seeds 3 signature phrases into every conversation, like compound interest beats virtue signaling, so the ideas replicate like a cognitive virus.
He points to the Roman orator Cicero, who embedded logical frameworks so deeply that Christian theologians used them to dismantle Roman paganism 400 years later.
Cicero achieved mimetic immortality. His physical body died, but his software ran on the hardware of millions of other minds.
In Riker's evolutionary calculus, if you aren't writing code for your great-great-grandchildren's behavior, you are a biological dead end. You're prey.
Because fiat currencies revert to zero, but disciplined bloodlines cloned through a million minds become eternal.
It's a philosophy of total, unyielding, intergenerational sovereignty.
So let's pull this massive landscape together. Conrad Riker's Behavioral Psychology is a synthesis of cold biology, extreme behavioral economics, and adversarial game theory.
It strips away all sentimentality. It's a meticulous manual for the manosphere to reclaim power in a weaponized world.
From using Skinner's WWII pigeons to hack dopamine, to the biochemistry of sleep as legal defense, managing a marriage like a hostile corporate takeover, engineering your financial bloodline for immortality.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to ponder.
Riker's architecture is based on assuming everyone is a potential threat. But what happens if this logic scales? What happens when both sides of a relationship or an entire society adopt these exact same psychopath survival tactics?
If every person is a fortified, gray-rocking, defensively armored node, does it create a perfectly balanced, veiled Nash equilibrium utopia?
Or does human connection simply freeze to death in a cold war of mutually assured destruction, where no one ever experiences love because they're too busy defending their frame?
It raises a profound question about the ultimate cost. When every interaction is a battle for leverage, you might win the war, but you burn down the village in the process.
Thank you for joining us on this intense deep dive. Remember to like and subscribe. If you want to explore the source material and see how the gears turn, grab a copy of the ebook on Amazon Kindle and Google Playbooks.
And be sure to follow the author at Conrad Riker at Substack.
Until next time, keep diving deep.